What's up, real estate world? This is David Clemens with DKC Lending and my partner, Caleb Delgado. And we come to you today on our first podcast, wanting to spread a little bit of knowledge and give you guys some insight into what we're doing here at DKC Lending. So this is our first podcast. We're going to probably skip around a little bit, but we'll try to give you guys some real knowledge and tangible value to take away from here today. So Caleb, we wanted to talk about here today on how to structure a deal. So how to structure a deal from A to Z. We're talking about game plan to team and tools that you may need. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Well, thank you, David, for that lovely intro with us. Yeah, so we're going to do not such a deep dive, but a little, stroke of the brush over, the game plan and the structure and what you need to be successful in basically any real estate market, but specifically the market that we're dealing in today. A lot of people are coming to us with a lot of apprehension in regards to being successful in a tough market, because right now everybody knows we are in a tough real estate market, and the downward is, we're downward ticking in this market. So David is going to go over game plan, team, and tools in regards to specifically what you need to be successful structuring a deal in today's specific market.
And we were talking about different ways to kind of talk about the structure of a deal from A to Z without deep diving too much into different topics. But I think a great way to give you some insight into what we're doing or how we structure deals is to talk about one of the deals that we have done. So we're going to talk about a 20-unit apartment complex deal that we've done this year in Tampa. It was actually last year, but we're going to talk about that, and we'll relate it. It is a multifamily of 20 units, but we're going to relate it to single-family properties as well. So it's easy to understand from 1 unit all the way up to 20, and it can multiply even to 50 and 100 plus doors. So for Lois Ave Apartments, we'll talk about kind of like how we took that deal on from a structural standpoint. So we are private lenders here at in Tampa Bay, but we also own a development company and a property management company, DKC Development and DKC Property Management. So those entities are very important to our lending vehicle, because without the development experience and knowledge and activity in the market, we wouldn't really have a great insight onto subcontractor labor and material costs and the changing market. But when we're in the market ourselves, we're experiencing the same things that our borrowers are. So not only can we relate to them, but we're trying to problem solve the same market and provide value to ourselves and our borrowers at the same time. So for Lois Ave, we used hard money loan as the borrowers, even though we are lenders as well. So we bought that property with private debt, as you know, and then renovated the 20 units and exited the property with a refinance, and we still own the property today and plan to for many years. But
so one of the things David was going into is how we, acquisitions of the property. When you're acquiring these properties, understanding the source of which you could acquire real estate, because there's many sources. It's not just, look on MLS or look on Zillow and you acquire real estate. Real estate can be acquired by wholesalers, from REO realtors, from banks directly, from probate attorneys. So it's good to understand your sources of getting this real estate. In this particular case, in talking to Lois Avenue, we actually received it from a local wholesaler in Tampa Bay. So when they presented us the property, we went on our acquisitions team, we sent them out to the property, assessed it, run comps, rehab budgets, and everything we needed to make an educated decision on acquiring and the prices we would pay for this property. And David will go into the exact numbers in which we got into.
Yeah, and I think from like a high level standpoint, whether it's a multifamily or single family, the acquisition strategy, a number of people have called it, on this one it was a BRRRR method, or buy, rent, or buy, renovate, rent, and refinance. But that's the approach we took, but there's also an exit strategy of a sale. So we're going to kind of walk through both options. On this one, we did use the BRRRR method, where we acquired the property, improved the asset, stabilized rents, and then exited with the refinance. And we did it in a really short period of time, so it was kind of amplified on the timeline. But the 20 doors, we bought it for about $2.165 million, and we were all in about $2.8 after construction. So we wanted to get an appraisal of 3.5 or so at the time, and the market was our friend. It was in an upward market a year and a half ago, and we were able to achieve like a 3.95 appraised value, and with that we were able to get a debt of $2.4 million. So
So David, if you could bring us to going back to the acquisition, when we were, reviewing the deal and deciding what we were going to purchase, what were you looking at and what were we looking at as a collective to decide if this was a good buy?
Great question. So we use our multifamily pro forma to tell us that decision. And that's our spreadsheet that has all of the rental income, the expenses of managing that property with our purchase price, rehab costs, and all of the factors included with debt coverage, our interest payments during construction, and closing costs for the hard money loan and the exit refinance. So to get all of that information on one sheet of paper is complicated, but doing so allows you to really see the whole deal at one time. Now, in order to put that deal together, you need a number of other documents, such as a rehab budget, a detailed rehab budget. You need some comparative analysis. So you need to know what the comps are renting for. So you need data research from the local market. So there's a lot of other factors that come in, but our pro forma, which we will attach to the bottom of this link, will be a great tool for you as a real estate investor to see the whole deal from A to Z on one sheet of paper. And I think that's something that a lot of investors, they may have a good idea of what they want to do on the back end, but putting the numbers out there and seeing what they really add up to, I think is an important strategy for us personally.
So one of the things, that sounds amazing, and one of the things that a lot of borrowers and investors come to me is, how do you buy real estate without any money? Because if you're talking about a 2.1 or a 3.9 piece of real estate that you're purchasing,
sure.
I think you kind of need to have money. Yeah. So when you're, analyzing the deal, what do you believe, where was your money coming from? How did you procure, down payments? How did you procure the actual lending component? What did you do in that aspect?
That's a great question. So, yes, you need cash. Does it always have to be your cash? Not necessarily. Okay. So, there's a number of joint venture type agreements, and we can shoot another episode to really deep dive into joint venture agreements. But we brought in an investor to put the down payment on this hard money loan. So just like all the other borrowers, we may need 30% down on the purchase. And so for that 30%, we would exchange an equity position for the money. And so, Caleb, being my partner on this deal, Caleb and I didn't come with any money actually ourselves on the down payment of the hard money loan. So we brought in an investor partner on for the down payment. And then when we refinanced on the way out, that investor got paid off in full on the refinance. So that investor gave us a short-term bridge loan in exchange for an equity position in the deal. And so that's one way to, bring cash without bringing cash of your own.
Got it. So when you got the numbers and everything together, what type of ratios or return on investment did you look at that made it a deal for us to execute? What were the actual numbers you wanted to target and hit?
Yeah, so I think, different investors have different goals when it comes to, what the ROI or expectation of return on investment is. But for us personally, being young guys and wanting to add assets to our portfolio and our balance sheet, the way we're looking at these properties is with the ability to pull all of our cash out of the deal after a serious value add. And if we can get all of our cash out of the deal in a 2 to 3 year time frame and procure a long-term debt on that asset, which means a 20 to 30 year amortization schedule where the monthly payments are being paid down the principal through rent payments. Mm-hmm. If that is able to be achieved, then it's an automatic go for us on the deal every single time. Now, other investors are using cap rates or price per door where they want to achieve, let's say a 6 or 7 cap rate return when they're stabilized, depending on the location, the asset size. There's a lot of variables there. But we've simplified our strategy in a way where if we can get into the asset, improve the value, procure long-term debt on a refinance, and get our cash out to go do it again within a 2 to 3 year timeline, then that deal's a go for us, because once we have that long-term debt, the rents are going to pay it down, and in 20 to 30 years, we'll be sitting at Lois Ave with no mortgage, and hopefully the asset will be worth $4 to $5 million at the time.
So then it's safe to say before you even sign on the dotted line and have purchased this piece of real estate, you've actually went through a game plan where you know the beginning and you know how you're ending, and it's all spelled out in great detail. In great detail.
And I think, stepping into these deals, and not only I think you need to know the exit all the way to whether it's a 20-year hold or whether you're going to sell in 6 months from the purchase, but it's important to have different options for these exits, because God forbid you want to flip this property and you want to sell in 6 months and make money, but if the market turns in the middle of your project it's important if you've set that project up from the beginning to have the alternative of being willing and able to refinance that asset and hold it on your balance sheet versus selling it. Then you're in a much stronger position, and you're not as subject to the market change, and you're less vulnerable.
Got it. So then one of the things that you said is that you procured hard money in private financing to procure the actual purchase. Why did you use that versus not going to the bank right away?
Yeah, that's, as hard money guys, obviously we love hard money, but it's actually the most useful tool. And this is a great example of why, because we got this call, another buyer had fallen through on the deal. And so we were the second or third buyer to come to the table. So when that happens, you typically don't have a super happy seller. And so they wanted a really quick close. So we needed to close on that 20 unit. And if you remember, it was 14 days, I think.
Yeah, it was really
10 days. Maybe.
It was 10 days.
I think it was 10 days closing with no inspection period. No time for an appraisal, no time for bank statements or loan applications with a conventional or even a hedge fund. At that point, it was we need $2 million cash with a $250,000 non-refundable deposit in 10 days.
Wow.
So
that could be stressful. Safe to say we were all sweating.
I think I remember you sweating up pretty good at the time, and I think we both were. I mean, those are whenever you get in those situations, they're fun. You got to figure your way out, but that's typically where money is made when you are able to figure out those tight situations and navigate when other people can't.
Great. So now that you've gotten all the numbers together and you figured out how that you were going to acquire the property, how are you going about stabilizing and doing the rehab, and what does that process go through?
Yeah, so I mean, when we got that, that's a great. So now we're into the stabilization. So we bought the property in a rapid pace, and that was why we needed hard money. But once we had the asset, we had all of our rehab budgets, and even that 10-day timeline, we had prepared rehab budgets. We had prepared quotes from subcontractors. We had contractors ready to start the project. On day 11, right after we closed. So on day 11, we were in demolition mode. There was, out of 20 units, 4 of them were vacant. So we went right into those 4 units and started renovating those, started doing exterior work from day 1. And
so did you actually want us to do the exterior first because it was available and obviously no tenants? How did you structure the fact that, were there 20 tenants? Were there 15 tenants? How did you work the schedule of, sporadic units everywhere, or how many buildings were available, or how did you do that?
Yeah. Well, it depends on how many units there are and what your timeline is to turn those units. So for us, we had a 6-month balloon, so we had to get through, the full exterior and as many of the 20 units as we could and refinance in 6 months from when we purchased. So that was a challenge because typically you want these 1-year notes, which will give you a little bit more time. But with that, we knew we had to get through, let's say, almost 3 or 4 units every single month to be done with 20 in under 6 months. So 4 of them vacant from the start. That was our go. And then we were posting 30-day notices to vacate at that time for the next 4 in preparation. But from an exterior interior, you want to hit the interiors that are open right away. But it's more difficult to lease those units for your increased rent until the exterior is nice and improved. So, we go in there and we try to put all the roofs, the windows, the exterior paint, a lot of the landscaping, things like that. We want to get that done right away in the beginning. So, when you're done with the interior units and you want to rent them for top dollar, you don't have, window replacements coming in your brand new renovated unit. That was done in the beginning.
That makes sense. That makes complete sense. So then going into that, as you create that schedule to do that stabilization and rehab, tell us some of the biggest caveats, because I know a lot of people out there are having supply issues, not getting materials in time. I mean, you talk about rehabbing. Contractors. How did you decide to use what contractor, pricing-wise, and also for scheduling issues and qualifications? There's got to be insurance. There's things that can happen on a job site. People can get hurt. Guys, how these guys are. They get drunk one night and they don't want to show up the next day. How does it all work for you, or how do you decide this is the right contractor for the job? He has the right crew for the job. And that you want to sign off on it. Is it money driven? Is it supply driven? Is it quality driven? What's the reasoning for that?
Sure. And I think it varies from developer to developer, but you want to build your team over a long period of time. So, we've been here for about 7 years now in the Bay Area doing this, and we've been trying to buy and sell apartment doors. We flip single family homes. We take on a lot of deal flow so we can have work for our subcontractor crews, because, providing them opportunities to make money and get jobs done consistently is what really provides you loyalty and somebody you can count on and trust. So those relationships are built over time. I think that, getting a referral through people if you're in the real estate world and you have a realtor or you have a lender, or even if you have, if you're buying material from a flooring store or something like that, like getting good quotes or getting good referrals from people that know them, I think is a good place to start. And then, doing your best to, if you can, create volume work. That's how you can really build a team and keep the team together.
Great. And then going into that, and I know there's a lot of choice with like permits, because I know lending wise, lenders require certain permits and certain work permitted, not permitted. What's your view on that? And do you require everything permitted? Where do you go?
City council, turn it off at this point. Because, on our single family homes, let's talk about our flips. So on our flips, when we're flipping a house, we want permits on roofs, air conditioning. If you're changing out all of the plumbing or electrical in the house, the major 4 points, if you're adding square footage or adding beds or baths, like you want permits on that type of work. You want a general contractor's license. You may need an architect or an engineer for adding square footage or bed bath counts. But for that type of work, you don't want to try to do it unlicensed. I think that's a bad idea, and that's not something we practice here.
Of course.
But when we're, painting, putting new fences up, or replacing cabinets, tiles, you should technically get an alterations permit for a lot of that work. Do we all the time?
Nah, yeah.
But we try to keep it moving. Speed is everything on these deals. So, permits take time. They're slow. They're expensive. The city starts to control your process and timeline. So if you can get away without, at the end of the day, you want to pass the right product on to the end buyer as well, and it has to pass all the inspections. So you don't want to get to the end of your project and find out that your roof was replaced completely wrong and you already paid him $20,000 and he's gone.
So investors, make sure to include permits in your budgets. Don't try to skimp out on them. It'll hurt you in the long run.
It will. Because we know those stories too.
Yeah.
We've been red tagged quite a few times as well, which is the alternative, and that's when the city comes and slaps a red tag on your door and tells you to stop working and submit all your paperwork. And I'll tell you, you're not a priority to the city at that time.
Yeah, believe me, they're not going to be nice on you. But so then the rehab goes well. Say everything works out, and then we have to exit now. So you started off with a hard money loan. Now you're going into long-term debt. People are going to talk about, direct lenders, going directly to a Bank of America, a Chase.
Sure.
Do you go to a mortgage broker? Do you go to a hedge fund? When you're deciding on this exit financing for you specifically as an investor or for everyone, what do you find is the best route or the routes that you want to have on the table to make the best decision you can?
Yeah, that's, there's a lot of different tools out there. I think, long-term loan products are constantly changing as well. So having a liaison in the business who is a lender like that is incredibly important. I mean, we're local private lenders, but we're hard money lenders. We're doing the 1-year bridge loans, the 1 and 2 year bridge loans. We're even seeking long-term debt elsewhere. I mean, we can connect you with a local broker, but we have strategic lending partners, even ourselves, that are in the business every single day, where they know daily what the rates and requirement changes are. So like having those strategic partners who are in the business, they're everything. They're critical. And so for us, we use a combination of hedge funds and local banks. So we have a couple local banking relationships here in the Tampa Bay area that we utilize for our multifamilies specifically. We've built a relationship up with these banks as well, and that helps with any lender, whether it's DKC or a bank. These are relationships that you need to nurture and build because and they're performance-based relationships.
Yeah. So speaking on to that, being in the lending industry, it's important that you guys have your financial, your personal financial statement ready, understanding your end lenders, what their qualifications are. Is it appraisal driven? Is it income driven? Is it all aspects in between? So for us, we understand exactly, depending on what lender we go to, do we have to have 2 years tax returns? Do we have to have, is it a debt service ratio loan where we're providing a lot of the rent performance?
Well, I can ask you you this question actually, because you being the lending expert. I mean, he was in the mortgage business for almost 20 years before I met him. So as for the long-term debt, I mean, what are some of the things that you need to know, and how quickly does it take to procure these loans, and is it something you can do as quickly as a hard money loan?
Yeah, definitely not. So hard money loans, as most of you know, the reason why you get them is because you can execute very quickly. Speed is a major component to being able to acquire property at the cheapest price, to close the fastest, and hard money is that avenue that gives you that ability to execute. As far as the end-term financing, there's a multiple ways and multiple qualifications for it. You do have to have tax returns depending who you go to. You do have to have pay stubs or bank statements or a personal financial statement.
What about credit?
Definitely have credit. End-term financing, you're not, I don't know a lender that does not run your credit. So, when people talk about credit, make sure your credit is A1 to the best of your ability, because that is a component that you cannot get away from. Hard money lending, you won't need it, but as far as your exit strategy, you will 100% need it. So,
what if you have bad credit and you have investment properties and you're looking for long-term debt? Does that mean you can't get any long-term debt?
No, there are some lenders that will actually let you get exempt from that, but your interest rate will feel that. You're not going to get the best and lowest interest rates and the best available product at the moment if your credit isn't correct. Can you get a loan? For sure, they are available. I mean, even us, we'd be open to it at the right price, right?
And not to even go down the rabbit hole, but different ways to qualify or make it, easier to get that end financing. A couple of different ways are lower loan to values. Secure the deal for the lender, make it an easier deal.
Yeah.
So you may need to bring more cash to the table, or have an asset that's performing to a high level.
Yeah, definitely the asset performing to a high level is the ultimate goal when procuring the end financing, because that's what they're going to look at. They're going to look at these, if you're upside down in the deal, why go in a deal if your mortgage payment exceeds your rents? It's all about seeing how much you can be receiving, per month and cash flow on that asset. That will determine a lot of the leverage the bank will allow on it.
So let's bring it back to team for a minute, because we talked about kind of that's the process from A to Z. We talked about the acquisitions. You're getting into the deal. You're stabilizing these assets via rehab budgets or just even putting a tenant in there to get end financing. And you're exiting these deals with sales or refinances. So what kind of team? We talked about some lenders, but I mean, when it comes to mind of a team, things that what other members do you need on this team when you say team?
Well, first thing I like to tell everybody, as real estate professionals, we all need to respect our community. A lot of people get very competitive of real estate. We all want to be the best at our job. But the one thing to understand is we all need each other. So talking about a team, we all need realtors. We all need mortgage brokers. We all need direct bank lenders. We all need contractors. We need title companies. We need attorneys and insurance agents. For us, the way we look at our network, because that's what you're developing at the time, is your network, as all affiliates of our own. We want our affiliates to make money and be a part of our organization, because we want to be the best well-oiled machine when it comes to real estate possible. And to do it, you need the team. And that is your teammates, your realtors, your contractors, your lenders, your attorneys, your title agents. All of these components are vital for this success. So, as a real estate professional, if you think you can operate there as a lone soldier, I would tell you you're gladly mistaken.
Yeah.
It's important to develop those relationships, give back to the community, to have camaraderie with your counterparts.
And on investment assets specifically, they're investment assets. They're in it to make money, and you're in it to make money as the purchaser, and so are your team members that are going to help you get to the end goal that you're looking for. And whether it's a realtor, I mean, you need realtors to be inaccurate on what you can potentially sell it for. And if you're not going to sell it at the end of the project, well, you need an appraised value. So that's your refinance that is going to be based off of.
So you need a projection from the realtor of what it's worth then and what it's worth later.
Exactly. You need, and that's extremely important. And on top of that, then when you have your contractors, we talked about building a team of subcontractors, that team could be comprised of many different subcontractors just on the subcontractor base, whether it's painters, plumbers, electricians, AC guys, roof guys. I mean, you don't want your AC guy putting on the roof either.
Yeah, I would doubt that.
You want to have a complete roster when it comes to your subcontractors.
So when it comes so as far as team goes, at this point, how many people are on a project at this point? I mean, you would see tons.
Dozens. I mean, when you're talking about on Lois Ave, for instance, I mean, we must have had over 100 people make money on that deal, and that's a beautiful thing as an investor. You got to buy a deal, add wealth to your family, and then at the same time you get to help others in the process. And not only that, we take a really high level of standard of care for our apartment complex, and now we take really good care of it, and we hope to provide great management for the tenants that live there.
Yeah, I mean, overall, you say you're helping the community and helping everyone there and everyone to make money. But why choose some of the people you choose? Because, I've had some people say, oh, I have my realtor team. But I've also had guys say things about realtors where they're realtor specific according to the geography because they're specialists inside of neighborhoods and areas.
Sure.
Do you think that that's something that, in your eyes, do you do that? Or how do you align yourself when you are acquiring stuff with a realtor? And then also, there's contracts involved. Are you getting them done by attorneys? Do you have them as, templates yourself, or how do you go about it?
Yeah, let me talk on the realtors. I mean, even for ourselves, well, I think in general on the team, we look for specialists. We look for guys like, we want to be the best at what we do, and we look for other guys that want to be the best at what they do.
Guys or ladies, right?
Guys or ladies.
Yeah.
So, we're looking for a plumber or our air conditioning, Nolan. I mean, he's a young, hustling business owner who wants to improve his company and grow with us. And those are the time. I think alignment and having other guys or girls or crews that are aligned in growth with you, I think is really important for that as well. But specialized help or team means you might need if you're going to Jacksonville, you need the local realtor in Jacksonville. The Tampa realtor may not be your best option to explain how the local real estate's changing in Jacksonville. I mean, I'm a licensed realtor, and I had one of my good friends help me on my purchase of my personal home, and he was a realtor, so he got the commission on that, and that was because he's the best at what he does, and I want the best service when I'm looking for a home for myself, even.
Right. So then going into that, as attorneys and contracts, do you have attorneys with Florida being a non-attorney state, or how do you feel, or how do you use an attorney as a tool to be successful for you and your company?
Yeah, so the attorneys are crucial to this business. They can perform title work, but we're using attorneys primarily for contracts and agreements. Excuse me, loan document preparations. We have our attorneys review title. So the title company will produce title, and even if our attorney is not the one doing title, they will still review our title policies and make sure that we're buying clear title that's insured. Which is extremely important.
Yeah, so, deal go bust, right?
Yeah. So I think attorneys play a crucial role. I think LLCs and entity formations. I think we can talk about that for a second, because setting your business up to succeed means structurally as well with the state of Florida. Making sure you file the right paperwork, you have your EIN letter, and your LLC is actually active and ready to go. Because I can't tell you. I mean, I can tell you, but how many times that borrowers have come and they want to close in this LLC name and it's inactive, or it doesn't have an operating agreement, or it's managed membered instead of member managed, and they mix it up on the agreements. So I think attorneys clarifying entity structure is crucial and makes acquisitions that much easier.
Okay, so I mean, well, that says a lot about that, keeping security. Now, with title insurance, can you go a little bit briefly on that and what the importance of the right title company, what can be missed, and the major pain points of not having the proper title company involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think, personal opinion here, but I think, a lot of title companies, a lot of labor force in general, whether it's title companies, subcontractors, lenders, when the market was strong, there was a lot of business, and they were struggling to keep good employment and good staff and keep up with the workflow. And so I think there was potentially a lot of errors and accidents that may have happened when recording title, and we're seeing that a lot now in our refinance business. Our portfolio of applications have shifted to almost 90% refinances in the last 30 days. And when you're doing more refinances, you see more title issues because these things were purchased 1, 2, 3, 5 years ago, and now as they want to procure new debt, they need to do a new title search, and you find out then that the satisfactions weren't recorded properly, or the mortgagers weren't satisfied at all, or there's code enforcement, lien search issues. So when you're, number one, getting title is crucial. You got to pull for title. And when you see title, you get to see the chain and the history of that asset, and making sure that the title company is insuring that commitment. That is the critical portion for you, because that ensures that's your insurance policy, that your title is clear. Yeah, they say it's clear.
Yeah, last thing anybody wants is a $200,000 mortgage that somehow didn't get satisfied, and then all of a sudden the bottom line, you go for your sale, it's not satisfied. You owe that debt. That's how that works. There's no getting around that unless you have a satisfaction somewhere in the chain of title. All right, so that covers a lot of the title stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the team. I mean,
so then how do you know? I mean, I want to go into tools because when people go into their toolkit, they have to know. If you go there and you want to do some drywall, maybe the razor might open it up, but you have to know exactly what you need to do and what tool to use where. How are you deciding what is the appropriate tool? And then inside of that, when you use that tool, what is your best counterparts to execute it for you? Because I'm sure you're using the tool, but people are actually doing it for you. It's not
sure.
just you doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes back to the team, right?
Right.
The team is so important. But the tools that you're talking to in like if you're a real estate developer or investor, your tool might not be the hammer, but it will be a rehab budget or a pro forma, which is what I mentioned earlier, where you're seeing the whole deal on one sheet of paper. Your lease agreements, your contract agreements. Do you have a specifications guide for what type of finishes you're using? These tools will help you create a better process or help you improve your process, and it will allow you to be more accurate, because if you have a budget, a rehab budget that's very detailed, you would see that an issue that might come up earlier on in the process versus if you have, I've seen a lot of rehab budgets that it's $30,000 and you have 5 line items. It's roof, kitchen, bathroom. Well, our rehab budgets have maybe 180 line items, and the bathroom is broken down into faucets, toilets, valves, tile, grout. It's the labor and materials are separated. We get really close to the numbers. So when you're done with the project, you can look back at that project and see what you spent and see where you went, may have spent a little bit more or a little bit less. And then on the next project, you can make those adjustments and be that much more accurate. So it's something that you learn and build, and getting reps is the best way to do it. So if you can't take on your own project, being a part of somebody else's project is the best way to get your foot in the door.
So then going into that, that's going to help you have the accuracy, of your initial projection, going back to the game plan. Using those tools in the game plan properly is what's going to keep the accuracy of your bottom line in the end for your profit.
Team and tools, I think those are the two big takeaways today. It's team and tools will help ensure the game plan. And the game plan can change. It can vary from project and asset to asset, but in all, if you have a game plan from A to Z, you have your team and you have your tools, and you're utilizing all of those team and tools, then I think that you'll constantly be improving your process, and that's what it's about at the end of the day.
Right. And so the last thing I wanted to go over inside of that is, in your game plan, things don't go as planned, right? Things can happen. We're in a market that has adjusted in the last 90 days tremendously. So when you're talking about a project, we spoke initially where it was 6-month turnaround time, and you have a 6-month turnaround time, that's larger than the 3 months adjustments we've had now. Yeah. So in your game plan, are you putting in there for times to pivot and make adjustments, and where do you normally see a lot of pivoting and adjustments being needed?
Yeah, I think that goes back to having options. Like as you and I know, we take on every deal has to have options. So if we feel like we can flip the property, whether it's a multifamily of 20 units or down to a single family home, if we feel like we can flip the home and make $30,000 on it, but we cannot refinance and be comfortable with the cash basis of the deal and the refinance projection, then we don't take the deal on. Because in our eyes, it's too risky to have just one option. So, and that's our personal preference. Some guys have a different risk tolerance. Some investors have different risk tolerances. But I think for us, it's important to have 2 options and know what your limit is and where you feel comfortable, and to play within that space and not overstep.
Great. So then going now outside of this deal, everyone understanding the fact that you have to have a game plan, you have to have your team, you have to know how to use your tools. You got a lot of information here today, but I wanted to go a little bit more. If you give us a little insight about DKC. Let's end a little about who we are a bit. Who are you? Give us your resume, Dave. Tell us
I'm not going to give the resume. Thank you for everybody for joining us today. We hope you got a little bit of value from this podcast, and hopefully we'll improve as we go here, as it was the first one. But we're grateful to have you. Please subscribe. Add any comments of what you thought and maybe future topics, and follow us on DKC Lending and go to dkclending.com.
Thank you.